Hi, and welcome everyone. This is Varleigh at Lavender Sky Panther with you live. It is Friday, January 16th, 2026. I put the start time at 11:55 p.m. Eastern, just so people might get confused if I put 12 p.m. a.m. that kind of scenario. So, welcome to my channel if you're new or returning. I'm happy that you could stop by and be here, whether it's live or on the replay. I'll put a little disclaimer out there. I do have live chat on if anybody wants to join in. Sometimes it's shadow banned, so people could be there, but I don't see it. I know all the settings are correct. I've said before on this channel, it's been shadow banned since day one, about 5.5 years ago. It is what it is. But I hope you can make it in. Feel free to join in. If not, feel free to leave comments later in the description area below. Sometimes those don't take either. I mean, in the comment section below. And if that does indeed happen, then also feel free to email me. And I put the email down there in the comment area each time, at least I try to. So today's topic, I had to kind of fight it like a marlin for this one. I had a whole nother set of slide images I'm going to go through. I like to print them out and do the hard copy way. It's in a PowerPoint format, but I just don't feel like I want to do that. I want to keep things kind of like tactile, hands-on. If you've seen any of my other lives, I do, employ props and things that tend to be meaningful or link into the topics that I'm talking about. So the reason why I say I kind of felt like I was fighting a marlin, and there's a sea theme coming up, a nautical theme coming up. Yes, we are going to touch on topics like the Titanic, and we're going to talk about all kinds of things. So when I wrote in the description area, just briefly, this is going to be a fun journey, and emphasis on journey. We're kind of going to take a ride through history, and I'm just going to, in the fashion that I normally do, I love to just throw out things, food for thought, and I will drop some observations that I have around surrounding some of these things, subjects and topics. I will be drawing from popular culture, so books, movies, references, kind of anything and everything. I'll be, presenting kind of like similar like the previous couple of shows. And so this one, Fighting the Marlin, because I had a whole nother thread, and actually that's funny, that word came up because I'm going to be talking about story weaving. We're going to weave a story here together. And I know you're just going to be the observer, but I'm going to be weaving a story, which means there's going to be a lot of different elements. And hopefully by the end that we're done, we have something cohesive and that makes sense. If not, there's going to be a lot of very interesting mini plots and threads that I'm going to drop in. And so we'll get into that right now. So I'm going to hold this up. The topic, so there was a whole nother topic that was going to come through, and I was ready to go and launch that show. But then I got a complete nope, stop, and turn, 180. We're going to go in a different direction. And when I say I got that, it's just I'm, an intuitive. So I'm just letting whatever, wants to come through for the collective to come through. And also something that is hopefully of interest. Maybe any of these topics will kind of light you up to go further and do your own research or look into these things. That's the whole point of this. So what I'm going to do is each topic that I cover, I'll give my impression or my opinion. And is it absolute? No. Can it change? Absolutely. And just for where I am right now and how I'm feeling about certain things is what will come through. Now I have a ton of, slides, so to speak, because this is a PowerPoint just printed out. But again, we'll see what comes through. I may go through each sheet. I may ditch some. So let's just see how this process wants to unfold. But what I will do is start off with just kind of folding up the cover page. So this is where we're headed. I hope I can't see from behind here so well. So bear with me. But this is going to be the topic. It's High Story Baby. So instead of It's History Baby, although we are going to be talking about history. So here we've got this daisy, or it's actually like a chamomile pattern motif is on some brick walls in the Ishtar Gate. These actually the glazed bricks that came off the Ishtar Gate, the original Ishtar Gate located in Iraq. Okay, that's important to take note. This is the history part, is one of the history parts, is the Ishtar Gate. So this is going to be something that comes up prominent in the show. And as you can see, like a hint of also the Assyrian relief showing this. They call them watches. It's like a bracelet. We're going to get into what this could be as well. And on the cover too, just little hints of what's to come. This is directly equated with this, and some of you may know what that is. That's the Imperial Seal of Japan. It's also found on Japanese passports. And that's what's interesting here. It is called the chrysanthemum. And I said this was chamomile. This was chamomile. This we'll get to what that is. But anyway, this is actually called chrysanthemum. And when the emperor of Japan ascends the throne, he ascends the chrysanthemum throne. It's called that. So it's very interesting. Anyway, I have rose windows, kind of just picking up on this kind of a motif. So this is a west portal entry at the Chartres Cathedral in France. And this is the floor, a labyrinth in the floor with like a flower motif at the center. So again, these are just little previews of what's to come. But high story baby. And we're going to get into the etymology of that, and it will make sense when we get into the show. But before we go there, since I just talked about the chrysanthemum, and so I do not forget later, I want to pull up, if you're not familiar with this crystal, it's pretty amazing. And this is called chrysanthemum stone. They come in all shapes and sizes. This one's pretty clean, and it reminds me kind of a white star or sunburst in the galaxy, and that's going to be important later in the show as well. Remember the keywords white star. Actually, that is a symbol, one of the symbols of Ishtar, of the Ishtar Gatehouse, which is mentioned. But anyway, this is happens to be a really black, specimen with the white starburst, which I'm going to call starburst, although technically they call that a chrysanthemum flower. Here, I'll try to put it up closer. So it's really cool. If you look into this and do a little internet search on all the varieties, you'll see there doesn't have to just be one. I'll just call it a star. If you say that star flower, it might have multiple. Some are really large, some are small. And this, I guess I'll just hold it up while I keep talking. And bear with me. I'm like, I was running all over the place before I hopped on to do this show. This one is sedimentary rock. So the dark part, they call it the dark matrix. It can be limestone, dolomite, shale, a clay, something like that. And then the white part, they call it a crystal inclusion, that forms that kind of flower-like appearance, or minerals, which can be celestite, calcite, andalusite, or feldspar. And I will give you an example of, let's see, what do I have? Wait a minute. I thought it also had, nope, I don't have them here. Sorry about that. Now I'll have to show that on the post section of my channel a little bit later. I'll break that down. But anyway, it's a beautiful specimen. So if you're not familiar with that, chrysanthemum stone. And it also, it has some healing properties. I'll just go through this real quick. By the book, there's certain properties that are either healing properties or spiritual meanings behind any given crystal or stone, a river rock, beach rock, whatever you want to name it. If it's a rock or a stone, it has a life force in it. And it has healing capabilities of some kind, guaranteed. But for one spiritual aspect of this particular stone, and I guess I'll keep holding it up, is that it is good for new beginnings, growth, harmony, and joy. It's since it's a black stone, much like black tourmaline or onyx or black lava, it helps to dispel negativity, and it's helpful for grounding. This one in particular, by the book, other people have written about this, and I'm also going to go intuitively what I'm picking up off of this specific crystal after I read this. It's supposedly helpful to lessen traumas, transitions. It's supposed to be beneficial for physical maturation from childhood to adulthood, so with growth. Supposedly good for fertility and pregnancies, just very helpful with that. And treating disorders of skin, eyes, and the skeletal system. And it supposedly helps well to absorb nutrients and to detox. Let's see. It's also supposed to help against tumors and growth of them and cancers. So it's got a 4 to 5 on the Mohs hardness scale. I do have separate shows all about crystals on the playlist of my channel. And I do have in the introductory crystals 1 video, I have like a flashcards I've made up that show you exactly what happens on that Mohs scale and what that hardness means. So it's basically like a diamond is really hard, and then other more calc kind of chalk-like, softer sandstone type things are really soft on the scale. So this is a 4 to 5. Okay, for anybody who needs to know. So it's actually can be carved. Okay, so now that we hopped into the little crystal part, chrysanthemum again, because that will show up later in the show with these motifs. I want to get back to talking about threads and the story about that. So what's interesting is threads and weaving a story and origin stories. So I was looking at an article, and it was called The Origin and Story of Weaving, an Intriguing Journey. And I can see it's very analogous to what I'm trying to do here, is put together a show where we're going to talk about origin stories of Earth and some of the characters involved. And I want to emphasize again, story, in this title, story. We are told a lot of stories about our history. I think increasingly each year, each moment, a lot of us are coming to, recognize and wake up to, like, wait a minute, things that we've been told in history don't seem to be correct. And there are a lot of great channels out there. Oh, hi there, Sarah T. Thanks for joining. I do see somebody. Again, sometimes this thing gets completely blocked. Welcome. Happy to see you. Thanks for being here. So the stories that we're being told, even within our own families, you may find that, all of a sudden you thought the whole history of your family went one way, and then those little dark skeletons and secrets have come out of the closet in recent years, and it's totally different. I found out in my family, going through family trees and things, in a weird way, it came down to me out of all the family to kind of go through a bulk of family history going back to the late 1800s. And I actually found out, and I'm going to bring this up because I mentioned I'm going to talk about Titanic in the show coming up. But a great, or whatever, I don't know how many times the great grandfather was actually on the sister ship to Titanic, the Olympic. And he had written like letters home to family. So it's really fascinating. So I can attest that, yes, the Titanic was real, the Olympic is real, a sister ship. And there was another ship called the Britannic. It was a trio of those ships. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I might as well say it. And that ship was named the Britannic, but it was originally going to be called the Gigantic. And that's important, and that's going to come up in a second. So hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining once again. Okay, so we're going to talk about weaving a story, and I'm going to, again, take everything back ancient. So I will, let me see. I'm going to skip around a tiny bit. I'm going to do the etymology of the title, and then I'll go back to the weaving part a little bit. So the high part, I want to emphasize that we're being told so many different stories. It's like getting to the point, like, what can we even trust anymore? And then to add insult to injury, we have AI fabricating any number of stories, endless ones. So it's very interesting this is happening. At first, I was very frustrated, and earmuffs for any younger audiences, pretty pissed off with AI. And now, you can't tell. Used to be really easy to tell. Things were a little glitchy on purpose. The voice wasn't matching up, with the figure representing a person. I know this was all done on purpose. They've got the smooth edition ready to roll out. This was just slow dripping, slow feeding us, what's coming. So, but now some things are getting so good that you've really got to look, really look extra hard to see, is that AI, the voice, the image, whatever. So since there's so many stories coming around, at first I said, yeah, I was ticked off about that, but now I see value in it. The value is we are at a time in a timeline which keeps shifting and hopping. That's a whole other story. That if you are in any sense waking up or on a spiritual journey, I had a great awakening, I've said before on the show, back in 2010. So this has been seeming a long time coming, that now more and more people are rapidly waking up. Even the movie Star Wars I've mentioned too, The Force Awakens. When that title came up in, I think, 2015, I was like, that's an odd title for the Star Wars franchise. The Force Awakens. It's telling you awakening. So much code in that movie about it. But anyway, back to it. So there's so many stories. So all of this is timely. It's coinciding with an era and a new way forward that we are supposed to go within to get our answers. Not supposed to. I don't like to use that phrase, but I threw it out there. It's live. It's kind of hard to do all of this. If you've done a live show, you know what I'm talking about. But what I mean to say is it's time, increasingly so, to go within, be in the moment, and just kind of check in and say, okay, where am I at right now? If I'm looking at an image in front of me, what do I feel? You know, is something off about it? We have that sixth sense. I don't even want to call it sixth sense. I think it's a sense without a number. We have that intuitive sense, just like a dog can sense friend or foe coming up to you or whatever. We have a aura, we have an electromagnetic field that goes out before us, and it goes out before us and registers, fake, not fake, authentic, not authentic, stranger danger or friendly, harmonious. And it's time to really just rely completely on that's like our little truth detector, within us. And so it's actually good practice, because if there's already been soft disclosure and even more direct disclosure, but people seem to be hitting the snooze button on it. But that is coming. So more and more people are getting dream visitation by a galactic family, we'll say. So ETs don't have to be scary. These are also just your family in a different form, in a different frequency, just like you have family in heaven and your ancestors or your guardian angels. We've got a lot of galactic families. So what I'm saying is this registering this, like within this test on, am I being fed a fake story, a tall tale, or is it true? That's going to apply to people are videoing, craft, UFOs up in the skies, cloak and craft. It's my whole channel dedicated to that for over 5.5 years. And if somebody sees one, this is a time where you just say, okay, I see this thing. It may seem, different or bizarre to me. A lot of people might not even believe that this is happening. But if you're confronted with one, then that is, up in the sky, then that is your opportunity to go within and you'll feel it. Does it feel negative? If so, walk away. If it feels like euphoria and love, then that's probably part of your family up there saying hello. Anyway, I know I kind of went all over the place, but my point is that there's a lot of stories going on, and we don't all have to agree or believe in the ones that are being told. It's going to be, is it true for you? This is going to be an individual basis. So, I could look at a video, you look at a video, 10 people look at a video. It's kind of like dream interpretation. Someone has a dream, you line up 10 people in front of the person who had the dream, and the person says, hey, all 10 of you, okay, here's my dream. What do you think the symbolism of it means? What do you think my dream meant? And each person will, go ahead and give a nice little account of what they think it is. Maybe you talked about, a red garbage can and a green wall, and there was a cat in there. And then, each person's going to have a very different interpretation of your dream. And so which one is true? Well, it's the one that, the person said it and you're like, yeah, that was it. Or maybe they didn't even get to it. And, you look at it later, but little bits and pieces of breadcrumbs that they laid out in their little assessments might then help you go, oh, yes, you might have an aha moment. And that's kind of the era that we're in. So what I've done is picked up pieces from here and there, little things that have been that little aha moment for me, whether it's been in a book or in a TV show or whatever. And I just sat down and kind of connected in what wants to come through today. So getting back to the title, I love etymology. If you've watched any of my stuff on my show, that's clear. And I wanted to look at the positive aspect of the stories we're told. So yes, I'm going to be getting to the Titanic, and there might be cross references to 9/11 there and whatever, but I'm just going to give accounts that I'm weaving a story. I'm pulling the threads and kind of putting a story of what I'm creating together. And again, maybe there'll be a little aha moment out there for any of you, maybe not. And if not, just move along. But there might be just even one word or an image or something that just, like, I think I want to go look at that a little further. And that's all this is for. And just, hey, it's a Friday night. Let's have fun going over some of this stuff. So the high part is just keeping a positive aspect of some of this ancient history we're going to go into, because we're going to look at Greek gods. We're going to look at the battle of giants and Olympians and, Titans and all of this. And so people also have, based on your upbringing or growing up on this planet, or your galactic connections. People are going to have very different views of this story. So I'm going to give my opinion on what I think of who the Titans were or the Olympians and what's the real story there. They often say the victor writes the history. Whoever wins the battle writes the history. And you can better believe if it's ego entrenched, like a lot of these things are, it's going to be a vanity, like a vanity film. It's going to be like, look how glorious we are, and might not even have much truth in there or a little bit of truth. So we're going to look carefully at all this too. So the high part is looking at that kind of more positive aspect or interesting aspects of some of these things coming up in some of the stories I'm going to go through. So high, let me get back to that. Sorry. So the HI, have you ever wondered why people say hi instead of hello? Or why do people say hello when they answer the phone? And I'm basing this on, I'm in the USA, so this is USA centric. But I think it applies variations of it in other parts too, like hello in UK and stuff. So anyway, HI comes from, I'm not going to go through where all of the etymology, I may have to clean this up and put it in the description area below. But the derivative of it lands at meaning good. And so just something of good nature. And, back in the day, people would say ahoy or, different, variations of that too, to get your attention. And that's kind of where it comes from. Now there's high, HY. And that's, I think, Old Welsh. And that can also, have good connotations and also mean clean. So we have hygiene, right? And then we have high hydrogen, where we get into the water aspect. And Hydra, the water serpent. And I'm bringing that in because that was in my last show. It was all about that. So if you see Live 11, you'll see it in the title too. We covered that. So this is kind of bridging some of that terminology into this story about the water serpents. And then we have hydros from ancient Greek getting us to the water part. Now, the history part in etymology, we can go to historia in ancient Greek, and it means inquiry, knowledge from investigation, and a narrative. And then, we get story from that. Now, histor itself, that part of the word, means wise man, and vide is part of the word too, and it's to see. So it's just to see, to have insight, to be wise, to gain knowledge, gather knowledge, and have a narrative. Now, the baby part, I'll just throw it out there for you all to see what comes to mind when you see the word baby. Now, I looked up what it should be, like the etymology, and what it tells you, the etymology from the Anglo perspective, it doesn't make sense to me at all. So then I was looking further, and what does make sense is the city of Babylon. To me, that's more obvious. And that's Akkadian language. And that comes from, I'll say it, I'll do my best on the pronunciation, but it's from Babe Elim. And that's the Babe part is gate, and the Elim part is God. So Babylon means gate of God. Okay. And that's going to become important too when we talk about the Ishtar gate and what that could be. Is it just a processional way to get to the throne room? Or is it a stargate? There's going to be a lot to it coming up. Now, of course, with Babylon, it's we get the Tower of Babel. That's also there too. So some say, oh, baby just came from babbling and whatever. Well, I say, okay, but that also still goes back all the way to Babylon. And Babylon is a city, I think it's about 50 miles south of Baghdad, and that's Iraq. So you might also wonder, start to look at and question where all these wars are happening. They're not happening just over minerals. If you look at the more ancient picture, I'm going to say inevitably there are galactic ties with all of this. We're seeing winged beings in the Assyrian, friezes, and there's a lot in there to talk about other realms. So whether people call them ETs or angels or this or that, we're talking beings that don't look like us at the moment, right? So, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. Yes. Sarah says yes. So, and like I was talking about in my live show, I guess it was number 10, about what is the shape of the earth. I mean it when I say we are all right. We are all correct, whether somebody says it's a globe, it's flat, it's, potato shape, it's a toroid, whatever. And I explain in detail why that is so. We're also at a point now in our growing and in our ascension, so to speak. This is a time of a spiritual awakening, whether people realize it or not. Time is flying by. I think most people can see that's happening, and that was a part of the Hopi prophecy. The Native Americans went into detail about what would be coming, what would be happening at the time that there would be a big change on the planet. And that being said, we are creating more of what we want to see, and we're getting more immediate results without going through this kind of, oh, how do I manifest this and consciously do this? It's just going to be, we're going to be at a point where you just think of something, and if it's high vibed and incompatible with what you're, wanting or wishing for, it'll just appear. And it's also going to come with this kind of age of ascension and getting in touch with ourselves and ascending in the spiritual sense, that doubt starts to fall away, because the outside world, which, a lot in this community we call the 3D matrix versus the 5D and higher, which is going toward the heavenly realms. The 3D is kind of like a net over the earth. The Hopi described it almost like the internet, and everything was like a net over the earth, keeping us, our spiritual selves, kind of trapped and down. And that's starting to disintegrate. So we're going to just naturally come back into our own natural gifts, and it's not going to be no efforting. There's going to be more confidence that, the world isn't going to kick me down in the gutter. That was the old. We're experiencing a whole, some people call it the death of the old. The old is shedding away. We've got the year of the wood snake ends, I think February 17th this year, on the Chinese zodiac calendar, and we're going to move into the fire horse. So we're trying to put all of our heavy bags down and just kiss them, bless them, say goodbye, all the extra things we don't need, and get ourselves like physically lighter of things, and just be in the now moment, so that whatever's coming next, we can just kind of glide on through, right? We don't need to be efforting and struggling with, all these like concrete weights, when we can just put them down and glide. That's at least my mentality right now. So anyway, I have some other etymologies. Oh, and I put them on this page. I didn't hold that up with like this reindeer or caribou. I can't remember anymore which one this was. I took this image years and years ago for a Christmas card, and I put them together. But it looks like a happy little reindeer, I'll say. Again, because we're going to start moving into the stories part of this. We're going to be talking Arctic, the Arctic Circle, Antarctica. We're going to go all over the place. So anyway, he or she's my little reminder I'll try to keep this light and keep it as a high story, high vibe story. So anyway, there's just a couple more interesting things. So when I was looking at high, the HY part, the Welsh part, we also have, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of, I've seen it kind of making the rounds in some of these types of channels. People talking about a little island, a phantom island called High Brazil, off of Ireland, off to the west side in the Atlantic. And it's a phantom island. It only appears about every 7 years, and it's shrouded in a mist, very mysterious. But anyway, that's spelled HY, so High Brazil. So that might be, if you're not familiar with that topic, something to look into. But then we get, like I said, then we have High, and then we have Hydra. And we're going to be going into the Greek, mythology part of the Hydra, and the many-headed snake being that, Heracles was coming into slay, and then that's the type of thing where you chop one head off and it regenerates right away. And I'm going to talk about what that figure is. And as we get into the story part of things, we really got to look at all the stories we're being told and look at them with new eyes, because we've got to look at, even with the Bible, Genesis versus New Testament, the whole thing to me has been compromised. There are little bits and pieces that are correct, but it should just be one page, the Bible with a heart on it, or showing people hugging. That's it. That's all Jesus would really want, But anyway, and I covered that in an earlier show too, called Lavender, Sky, Panther in my lives. Why I say that. But anyway, now I got myself off track. Oh, Lord. I really did. Literally, Lord. All right. Well, anyway, the Hydra. So that's, right. who are the good and quote unquote good and evil characters in the story. Some of these stories were being told from the perspective of who we might think is quote unquote bad, you know? And so if you look at like Old Testament to New Testament, you know, Old Testament has a very vengeful, petty, like nasty God. Sorry, it is like, you know, like, so if that's not a loving God, like I believe in a loving God. So that part might be written by somebody who's talking about a false God, who's trying to pass himself off as a true loving creator God. So we got to watch out who the characters are in the stories. And again, this is an individual journey for each of us. This is your own little barometer, your own little measuring device inside that says, oh yeah, that rings true for me. And if it does, great. I'm not judging anybody else's story, nor do I wish mine to be judged, right? And as long as no one is doing harm unto others, I think we're all good. Okay, so anyway, we'll get into, like, I'm mentioning this because when we get in, especially into the gods story, who's who and who's, you know, who's trying to overthrow whom, we have to see who's really the hero and who's really the villain, right? Now I say good and bad, or good and evil in air quotes, because really we are on a planet that has experiences, contrast, duality, and all of that. And that's part of the game. It's part of the big game. We got to have it all. And if everything were great and wonderful, we'd just be in the 5D and higher realms, floating around. I say, like, floating around playing harps and shooting love arrows or whatever. You know, we wouldn't need to come here. So we come here to be in it, to be in the trenches, to know what it's like, to have compassion if somebody's hurting, the healing heart, the loving heart, then can go love and help, try to help. If there's nobody to help, then that experience is gone, right? That type of thing. So anyway, I'll finish up here. So we talked about high, the HY, meaning, you know, can go into clean. You know, it's funny, the HI and the HY, it's covering both good and clean. And that little quote in the Bible, the, you know, cleanliness is next to godliness. So it's funny how that kind of does interconnect hand in hand. But what I wanted to look at is if we have the high, the HY, and the dra for the hydra, because we will be talking about that being, you know, mythological primordial god is what some of those are. We'll get into that. But the dra can be drama. The roots, we have words like drama. Drachma is a coin. But the DRA is supposedly comes from like to take action or to act. And like with the coin, it's like the giving, and then it goes into the currency and the flow, you know, and it keeps moving on. Anyway, I'm going to talk about two more things, kind of more along the etymology vein. Then we'll get into weaving the story and get into the really juicy stuff, the good examples that I want to get to. But I have here in my notes that I want to talk about the croissant story. And I'm going to have to stick to my little cue cards this time around, because if I jump out of order like I like to do, I will never, ever cover remotely any of this that I prepared. And I spent a lot of time preparing it. But this is going to explain a little bit about like who's telling the story. So I'm going to tell you a story. And, you know, I even looked on the internet to see what their version of it is. I was told this story about, I hate to say it, that I'm even this old, it's like mind-boggling, but probably 40 years ago by a teacher in secondary school. And it was a language teacher, and she told me this story, and I never forgot it. And I don't even know what the context was of why she told it, but I just know I didn't forget it. So she was talking about, like, do you know, or maybe she taught French. I guess that's where it started. So she said to me, I was taking Spanish at the time, but she said, she taught both. And she said, oh, do you know what the story about where the croissant come from? Do you know why the pastry, the croissant, why it's shaped like a moon, like a crescent moon? And I just thought, well, you know, I hear the word croissant. Okay, crescent, that's not a bridge too far to leap on that one. I get it. But she goes, no, but you know why it was shaped that way? Like why the bakers came up with that shape? And I'm like, no. So I'm just going to read it straight up because I'm a little tired. I get a pass for myself. But here it says, a popular legend says the croissant's ancestor, the Austrian Kipferl, was created to celebrate victory over the Ottoman Turks in 1683, with bakers shaping it like the crescent on the Turkish flag to symbolically eat their enemy after foiling a siege of Vienna. This pastry later became the flaky, buttery French croissant through refinement, with Marie Antoinette introducing the Kipferl to France and French bakers developing the laminated dough. It goes on to say the legend of the Kipferl. The siege in 1683, Ottoman forces tried to take Vienna by tunneling under the city walls. 2. The baker's alert, in this number, they have it numbered in the story. 2. The baker's alert. Viennese bakers working at night heard the digging and warned the army leading to the Turks' defeat. Celebratory pastry. To commemorate the victory, bakers created crescent-shaped pastries, Kipferl, mimicking the crescent moon symbol on the Turkish flag. So, and then they're just going on just to reinforce that Marie Antoinette, the Austrian princess, brought her love for Kipferl to the French. So anyway, this is a prime example too of a story of what do we, believe in this story? Like, do we believe Marie Antoinette was involved in that one? I don't know. What do we hear from her? The famous quote, "Let them eat cake." There's a whole weird history there too, which I'm not so clear on. But of like who's who in that story. But what's interesting is that they mention the Ottoman Turks, and if anybody's into Tartaria and Tartary, that would include that region. And so what's interesting is also the symbol of the crescent on the Turkish flag. I'm not going to cover it here, but that's one of those things that I'm going to drop and go if anybody's interested in checking that out. That's a whole nother, I know people say rabbit hole to go down. I'm so tired of hearing that phrase. It makes sense. And I know why. We've got the, connection with the Alice in Wonderland story and all of that. But I'm going to start saying badger holes or bear caves or something. I think badger holes that we're going to go down. But I'm not going to go down the Turkish flag one. But it does have a fascinating origin story. So that's something I'm going to leave there too. Anyway, interesting that the moon reference also comes up, like the crescent moon. Tartary, I've got a tartan on. Actually, it did come from Scotland. So I'm going to actually jump into the etymology on that right now too, which is next on my list. So tartan, now by the, internet search, whatever we can find here, it will say that it comes from French, like tartane, tartan. They're claiming it came from like some hotel owner that wanted this pastry, whatever. Okay. Not pastry, sorry. Yeah, some kind of pastry, sorry. Yes, this is food related. So we had the croissant, and now we're going to another food related story for Tartar origins. Okay, so there was the tartane or the tartine is an open faced type of sandwich. Okay. Then we have the meaning for tartar. Also, somewhere along all the stories I was looking at for this, can mean people. And it can mean people of the specific kind of Ottoman Empire region, and that people were probably certain groups of people outside of that empire would maybe have been afraid of them. And so Tartar also comes from Tartarus, and that is the place supposedly the primordial Titan gods were sent after they were defeated by the Olympian gods. And I'm going to get to that little story too. So Tartarus is supposed to be like a hellish place, or a place where people go like hell. So anyway, Tartar can be a people. And what's interesting is I think I was asking one of these things in the internet, like, oh, so does this come from Tartaria? And it was like, no, that's like ridiculous, on and on and on. So the more vehemently the answer on the internet search was that, no, that's like a myth. And, it's true. Because then I asked about some of these other things, like, did this come from, is this related to Tartaria? And it goes, oh, yes, this is. So anyway, we have Tartar people. We have, of course, if you know in the U.S., I'm sure it's in other places too, steak tartare, cream of tartar sauce. We have a tart, the French pastry, a tart, which is kind of sour. So again, it's like a bitterness. So is that referring to Tartarus, below where the gods are punished? Or, is it also just like a bad taste in your mouth for a maybe conquering people you don't know about? Then there's tart, the jam spread on a pastry. You have like a nice tart. Now, what's also interesting and kind of unfortunate is that tart used to mean, I think, pre-1850s, if that was a thing with this, like sweetheart, like a beloved woman, a beloved female. So it's kind of like you say sweetheart, kind of goes like that. But then somehow in the UK, and I don't know where else, if this applies to Australia, but then tart has become to mean a negative, like a female prostitute or a female with no good morals. And so that word completely got corrupted, right? Tart, I didn't even know that was a thing until I saw, oh gosh, way back, that movie, Bridget Jones's Diary, and they talked about she was, oh, well, spoiler alert, she showed up and they said, oh, it's a fancy dress, like you're supposed to dress up in costume. And last minute they changed it, and then nobody did. And the theme was, what is it, tarts and vicars? I didn't know that was a thing. So like, clergy and prostitutes. Anyway, that's a little aside, but we will move on. So that's a little bit about the etymology. Now, as far as weaving a story, and actually crossover with etymology, I found it really interesting. And supposed Norse mythology or sagas, the word, and I'll probably be saying it wrong, is either Peter or Deter, means a short story, and it also means a thread. And so in their world, a thread and a story were all a part, like direct connection of story weaving. Very interesting. And so weaving stories, origin stories, we're going to be looking at a little bit of mythology and other stories that we've been told about our origins. And again, time to put our little truth detector, our inner truth detector on, turn it on. Like, does that match up? Okay, if it does, great. But if not, hey, let's have some questions and some fun with it. I mean, I love asking questions, hearing other people's opinions. We don't have to agree. That's the fun of it. If we all agree, things get pretty boring. At least I think so anyway. But anyway, I'm going to turn this slide around. So I started looking at textiles and things. And so let me try to do this cleanly. Give me a moment to get it correct in here. Okay. Anyway, I just pulled some examples through history. So going to the Egyptian culture, we have a frieze, a bas-relief where somebody's doing the loom. This is a Coptic piece of textile with like a tree of life motif from Egypt. This is a Navajo design. Down here, this is the Iroquois nation. This is a belt of peace. What's interesting is this is a weaving, but done with shells, so like beads. And I think it doesn't come off right, but it's purple. And the purple color, I think they got from a particular shell that had that color. I don't know if it was an oyster shell or something like that. Then we have weaving of these huge baskets and even boats in different cultures way back. We see evidence of that in hieroglyphics and all kinds of things. And then this is a Hawaiian example, and it's really pretty because the weaving is kind of making little star clusters, but there's other types of patterns too with that. And then this is just another couple examples of different types of looms, something more substantial and flat, and then a standing one. So anyway, we could talk an entire show about weaving. I would have to get educated on it. But as I was just doing a little mini dive here, it got really fascinating. So I know a lot of people are into knitting or crocheting, all kinds of things as a form of meditation. That's a beautiful thing, and it's kind of back. It never went away. It's ancient. All right, so now we're going to start to get into some stories made by others and movies, or coming as like a lot of truth seekers and YouTube in form of YouTube videos. This one, we're going to start moving into the theme of ice, which is going to get us to the Arctic and Antarctic eventually. This was a whole nice little thing popping up that I hadn't really heard of before, but new must be true. So I was looking at a YouTube channel. I'll give everybody credits in the description area below. So between two different YouTube channels that come to my attention recently, John Livy and Jared Boosters. So, and again, I'll give all proper credit to them in the description after this airs. But anyway, point is that this was from a John Levy show. And this was like a huge ice palace supposedly built in the middle of nowhere, I think in the US. Leadville is the name of the city. And, you can even just see some of the ice block construction. And it was supposedly built in the middle of nowhere, tiny, tiny town. to attract like tourists. So this gets into a whole discussion on are our buildings from the way past. You know, a lot of people refer to them as Tartarian, meaning an old world building civilization that had very sophisticated buildings that can't be replicated now, even with our modern technology. Where a lot of these just found, you know, you see even on like plaques, this is founded, this building was founded in this and such date or year. Yeah, because they were literally found. Like, the more I'm seeing these pictures surface, and not AI ones, and I think these guys of these channels are finding ones that are non AI. And that's another thing. You just, again, do a little truth detector test. You know, is it AI or not generated? Because obviously we want authentic ones. But the more I look, it's like the people on the streets, they look like they got dropped in from God knows where. Like they either were just dropped down from somewhere, another dimension, or they came up from all over Earth. They're just wandering around. It's like there's a lot of, you know, huge, cleared out, wide streets that just look like, yeah, I know a lot of you do subscribe to the whole mud flood idea. I do too. I got to say, like, the more I've been looking at the photographs, you can just see that something worldwide either flash froze figures, you know, like you see faces, and this gets in the whole discussion of the giants, like fossilized into mountains and other animals and creatures. They were just like flash frozen and fossilized. You know, obviously you see that effect with Pompeii, and even more recent times with Lahaina, with all the directed energy weapons, just zapping people. I saw an example of a cat was just like that, freeze frozen like that, and like can turn to dust, or, you know, to something harder. So we can see, you know, even now in modern examples, these things have happened surely in the past as well. But anyway, you know, getting back to this, so this is supposedly ice palaces that probably already existed, but there needed to be an excuse in the 1800s for these to now have been constructed, right? So looking over here, this is an example somewhere in Canada, over here, sorry. And then this is somebody built this out of sugar cubes. I thought they did, I'm pretty sure it's sugar cubes, pretty cool. And I love the creativity in that. But anyway, some say that, okay, maybe they were ice, but maybe they were also block, but people coated with water and it froze to make it look like ice. I don't know. But the point is that an entire kind of one of these secret society type things started to develop around in Canada. They were called the Snowshoe Club, apparently. And they were going around, and they started the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, trying to justify, you know, that, oh, this was just built up for this special occasion, when in reality, my little truth detector is saying, no, these buildings were here. You look at ancient maps from the 1300s, 1500s, all the lands are riddled with castles, you know, so they were there, you know, and we're seeing them here. And there are other, I don't have a slide of it with me, but there are others, and I'll put links to some really nice shows of them, but by other YouTubers. You look in some of the desert areas of Utah and out west, and you can just see that there's all this what look like, you know, would be canyon walls and stuff. They're just like melted buildings in other places in the world. So some type of warfare happened, you know, big scale warfare on our planet to just melt down bricks and, you know, structures. You can see it, and once you see it, you can't unsee it, type of thing. All right, now we'll get to a more lighthearted topic. Now we're going to move into Greenland. So my own little journey here, and I'm just kind of weaving this little story and multiple storylines. After I was looking at these ice palaces, just for some reason this movie came back up on my mind, and this is before the whole Greenland topic became another hot topic and researched again to be a hot topic again in the last week or so. So this came on my mind like just a couple days ahead of that news resurging. And it was about this movie I saw, I think it was in 1977 that came out. Maybe some of you even know the book. It's called Smilla's Sense for Snow. And there's different titles for it. One says Miss Smilla's Feeling for Snow. And then the German version is Fräulein Schmilla's Gespür für Schnee. So it all means the same thing. And I remember seeing that movie, and I thought it was interesting. It's a thriller, you know, kind of like, you know, back then it was a more like intense thriller. I don't think I would watch it now. If I did, I would watch it with like fast forward, you know, what you can do on a DVD or on streaming. But anyway, it might be worth it to somebody out there if you're feeling interested in that. What's interesting, the reason why I'm bringing it up is I don't want to ruin the story for anybody in case you do watch it, but it does involve Greenland, and the opening scene is a huge meteor hits it, and it's what's found in the meteor and what happens that gets the whole storyline going. But what reminded me too of this is she has to try to get on a ship to solve this crime, and she hops on it. But as it was pulling away, because I just saw a preview of it recently to refresh my memory about the movie, and I'll put that in the link, and I'll put the link for that in the description area below too. As that ship is pulling away, on the back of it says Kronos. So that's one of the gods we're going to be talking about soon. So anyway, I'm just bringing this up because the topic of Greenland, my truth detector is saying this is not about minerals or resources. They gave us the same kind of sad line about Antarctica. This is not about claiming that area for minerals and resources. If it were, we would know much more about these places. Instead, what happens, you could just imagine police tape running all the way around these places. They're not letting the common folk know anything, about it. They're all shrouded in secrecy. And I do have, my opinions on that, which I'll get to later. But anyway, and it's funny, I use the example of the police tape going around, because in the US they put a yellow police tape with black letters saying police line do not cross if there is a crime scene, to cordon it off from people just wandering through. And if you look at, again, I'm looking at words and breaking them down, look at the word police. It's pole ice. Just funny little coincidence, I think. And then, of course, we have the unfortunate situation happening now with the ICE agents going in, right? So I say unfortunate because I'm not making that a political statement. I'm just saying if it was you or your family and you're innocent, that's no way to handle things from a humanity point of view. Anyhow, so I'm bringing this up because if you look now online, there's so many maps and people are showing versions of Greenland, without the ice. I don't even know if there is a sheet of ice the way they say, to be honest, because actually I don't like that phrase. But anyway, to be honest, I am. But when you look at Google Earth, I've talked about that too on the live show number 10 about the shape of the Earth. So much is doctored and changed and not even true. I can just tell from a graphic artist's point of view what's been kind of blocked out and tampered with, and so could anybody off the street. I don't think you have to even have that training at this point. So is there even an ice sheet to the extent that they say? I don't know. I mean, I remember growing up and seeing Greenland always depicted as green on maps, and now suddenly it's all white ice. So within my lifetime, so something ain't adding up. Anyway, what's interesting is if this is remotely true, if they're showing taking the ice off, it looks like some big deep body of water here. So why all the buzz about Greenland now, right? Supposedly there's a Golden Dome warfare technology in place, and U.S. doesn't want Russia or China coming in. No, that's all a sideshow. That's stupid. It's Looney Tunes. There's something going on here, and I'm going to say it's of galactic nature. I mean, even the whole Golden Dome thing is supposedly a part of Space Force. So let's just look at the elephant in the room. There's something galactic tied here. And this will apply to Antarctica too, when I'm where I'm headed soon. Talking about other stories, and I'll refer to another movie for that. But look at, is something going to come up out of here? We're talking the Arctic Circle, where I've talked about on other shows. I bring up this seems to want to come in as a reference every time, is a book called The Smoky God, or A Voyage to the Inner World. And this goes in detail of what could be in inner Earth, hollow Earth. And Far East cultures talk about Shambhala inside inner Earth, right? Agartha. So there's plenty of stories to substantiate in inner Earth. And I covered that on the other show, Live 10. All right. And actually, while we're talking about ice still, I just want to mention, since I do like to bring up popular references, this is a children's book series, but I got to say, I had read it back in the day with Child in the Family, and I really enjoyed them. But of course, I like the more PG nature of things as it is. But this is Spirit Animals. This particular book is called Fire and Ice, and it involves a lot of spirit animals and talismans, and there's a whole thing there. But What's interesting here is it talks about an entire ice city, which, since I was bringing up the ice palaces, and I brought this up on another show too. This is Wings of Fire by Tui T. Sutherland. Oh, this one, the Fire and Ice one too. The thing about this series is a different author writes each book in the series, and this one was by Shannon, Hale. And again, I'll put this in the description area below. And this one, Wings of Fire series, the first one I thought was pretty brutal for younger kids, the first book in the series. But if you can just like read a light version to a child, like as the adult, read through and skip like some of the gruesome parts, the rest of the series gets better. But for that purpose, for it being suitable for a younger audience. But this one, Wings of Fire, is called Winter Turning. And as you can see in the background, they've depicted Ice Palace. So Ice Palace theme happening in popular culture and elsewhere. And then I've just put up a series of YouTube shorts. I'm sure some of you have noticed. And this one comes from The Last Airbender, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, I think his last name is. And normally he does kind of more negative vibe stuff. I think he did that movie called Signs with Mel Gibson. I think there's some others. But anyway, since this was oriented for children, I think like 10 or 11, I think he did a decent job, sticking to that, making it suitable. Okay. So anyway, that's just covering some ice. And then, of course, this doesn't directly relate to ice palaces, but we've got movies like from the 70s, Ice Castles, and, all that. All right. Now, this is a little bit mappy, but I'm just going to put this up. One more view of the Arctic, before we move to the South Pole. And this one, this is just showing who claims what territories up here. So here's Greenland. And then this is like, the big blotchy area on the Google Earth that shows nothing. So in essence, we've got Alaska over here. So the gold ones are US's claim to whatever's happening up here in the Arctic, right? Greenland is Denmark. So anything red is what they're claiming. Russia's green. So they're claiming that bit. And Canada has the blue bit over here. And I forget who has the white bit. If that's Norway, it must be Norway. So interesting, right? For nothing happening up there seems to be a lot of claim. And I have another map somewhere. I don't know if I put it on here, but it also shows like circulation routes, like for seafaring, vessels. Like there's one route that goes this way and another comes on this side and one comes up through it. So, I can't, it's always mirrored, this way. Somewhere through here. Anyway, North Pole is like right in here. So what's going on? Again, just food for thought. I am saying it's absolutely not about minerals or even defense. If anything came space-wise, my point of view is this. We are equipped. We will be activated. There's nothing to fear if you are of a good intended, person. And there's absolutely nothing to fear. So whatever is trying to be manufactured there and the war drums beating, just tune it out. Stay high vibed. I was a little bit alarmed. It came to my attention that I didn't even realize this happened. I guess in 2025 at some point. I wrote it down somewhere the month. I can't remember when. But the U.S. decided to change the Secretary of Defense to being the Secretary of War. Okay, this was, I don't know if it was September 2025 or whatever. So that kind of took me aback. And in fact, the government website even just says war.gov instead of whatever Defense Department. So I'm not too keen on that. I didn't vote for that in any way. Anyhow, just again, there's stories that are going to play on the outer world. And the best thing is not putting the head in the sand and then pretending it's not there. Just to be aware of it. I see it, kind of like, okay, I see you. That's happening. Not in my reality. I don't vote for that. I don't consent, and I'm not behind that. So that's what we can do to kind of keep our focus and create our world, so that now the next news thing I see, because I'm like, nope, not my reality. That ain't going to happen. I'm not supporting that. Now we're in times where we're going to get supported with our energies, especially when they're good intention. Now tomorrow I might see a headline and it's going to say something totally different, which will be good, in a better direction. All right. That's how that works, and at least how I'm seeing it work these days. All right, so let me pick up the pace a bit. I'm looking at the time, and I don't actually have a cap on the time, but I know a lot of people don't like to sit through a long show, so I'm going to pick up the pace a tiny bit. So just as I showed the territories for the Arctic, we have an interesting pie chart graph, whatever. Oops. Sorry, I'm backwards, so I'm going to do this all over the place. Hopefully you can see this. So once again, it's showing like who's who in the scheme of things. I think Australia is this whole section here. Yeah. And the US is here, this wedge of the pie. And then the different countries are in the different places. So the reason why that's green and all of that is Australia. Oops, sorry, here. Well, the reason why all of that is Australia claim is because Australia is right here. And Australia is here. There's a tip of it. And New Zealand's over here. So it's kind of like they do a little trajectory, whatever's nearest, they get the claim, right up there. And this is where, Admiral Byrd and those little America expeditions were happening over here. So I have to look at it to see who the other countries are. Oh, okay. We have United Kingdom, Chile, and Norway have other big pieces of the pie. As does actually New Zealand has a pretty wide swath, actually. This down here is New Zealand's piece. And let's see who that little sliver is. That's France. Okay. So, yeah. So for nothing going on down there, supposedly. And we're also, I saw another comparison map where the U.S., the whole, all of the states, continental states of the United States fit within the white part of that. So it is a pretty large landmass. Could it be bigger? Absolutely. I don't think we're told the right size on anything either on the maps. But, that's a lot of interest for something that, is even just minerals or resources of that nature. Oh, and then for anyone who hasn't, been in the know on the Antarctica thing in the past, at least around 2018, 2019, a lot came out about there being 3 pyramids down there, very clearly observable. I mean, there are more, but 3 notable ones. And there was a thing that happened, actually real time. I observed it on YouTube. This was before the heavy censoring started kicking in. And Buzz Aldrin of the astronaut fame had gone down there, I think in his 80s. I think he was already in his 80s or close. And he went down there on a trip. And he had some kind of heart problem, they say anyway, or something happened to his health. And he was flown and rushed to New Zealand, to Christchurch, New Zealand. And then he was moved again from there. So when he landed in New Zealand, though, he had sent out, supposedly him, maybe it was somebody on behalf of him, who knows, but he had a Facebook page or something, and he said there was a picture of this tallest pyramid, and his caption was something like, "It is pure evil down there." Now, almost instantaneously, that was scrubbed off the internet, real time. And then he was deemed like, oh, he's crazy, he's just lost it a bit, and, whatever, he's recovering. So I don't know. I felt the warning in there. I don't think it was just like fake stuff, because this was before all of that started kicking in. This was back in like 2018, 2019, I want to say. Anyhow, of note. Again, is that story something that resonates? Did he see something down there that was like totally evil? Again, before the internet was scrubbing things left and right, I saw a story. And again, we're talking about high story, baby, like the title of the show. I saw a story where a group of scientists were going down there, because it is the national, I guess, I don't know if it's national, what's the N stand for, but Scientific Foundation, the NSF is down there. Supposedly that's all they're, looking at scientific stuff as well, but we don't really hear much, do we? Anywho, so supposedly a scientific crew was going to go to a certain region, and some cargo pilots were flying them there. So they dropped them off. I think there were like 6 scientists, and they dropped them off with pallets, all of their supplies. They get their little kind of camp going together. The cargo pilots make sure they're set up, and then they leave. And I think the pilots were supposed to come back like a week later, 2 weeks. I can't remember. So supposedly the scientists did have radio communication to a base camp. However, that got, disconnected somehow, or they couldn't, there's interference, something, they could not reach them. So they tried reaching out to the scientists, got nothing. So I don't know how many days a rescue team waited, but they did go back. A couple pilots went to go pick them up or see what happened to them. So when the story goes, because I read the story, I remember it clearly, so that was very odd, and it rang true for me. It just hit me in the gut like, oh my God, that's real going down. And this is before I heard about the Buzz Aldrin thing, I think. Anyway, so the story goes that the cargo pilots went back to get this scientific crew and pick up their equipment, or just find them, actually, make sure they were okay, rather. So they look, they don't find them. They're starting to worry. And then all of a sudden, the crew, the scientists start kind of slowly coming from somewhere back toward their camp. And they look completely dazed, like catatonic, like something, there was no reaching them, like no they're there. When the pilots tried to talk to them, engage with them, get anything out of them, just have a conversation, it's like they sat there, numb. So anyway, the team obviously wanted to get the heck out of there. They're like, we just need to leave immediately. We need to go. So whoever could speak, for them. So they packed up everything and took them, and they thought it was really weird. So apparently, again, the story goes that they did not speak for the entire trip back. So did they witness something? There are reports of really evil things going down there under the ice in Antarctica. Then we got the whole Operation High Jump. I touched on that a little bit in my last show. Or not in the last show, but the LIVE12 show. Anyway, that's a scene of just some military involvement down there in Antarctica. And then this is just a map of some of the cities. Sorry. Here, I'm going to try to hold it still. You'll do better. Just do a search on that if you find this map. It just shows the routes and things that were going to be taken for Operation High Jump. And again, that operation was in 1946. U.S. led thing with Admiral Byrd at the head of it, and they went down there right after the quote unquote war end of World War II, and they went with a sizable force and supposedly to survey the land again for minerals and resources. Look at the numbers. Excuse me. I invite you to go look up that story. How many ships and how many people? Thousands upon thousands going down there, and then what happens? Do we hear anything about that? Any really good report? They did tons of reconnaissance flights to take pictures and photo document everything, right? And they left there with haste, like with the tail between legs. They got out of there fast. They hauled ass out of there. So again, lots of different stories going around. What feels right, and true for you. All right, so just on this theme of ice and finding things, maybe finding things under the ice, maybe, back to the Greenland issue. There seems to be a bit of urgency there now all of a sudden. Some people are saying that, it's because the ice is melting and what's being discovered under the ice. Same thing applies to Antarctica. And that just reminded me, again, going to popular culture, the movie Transformers, I think it was the very first one. And the grandfather, is down doing an expedition. I think it was supposed to be Antarctica. One of the poles, and he goes down or falls down in a crevasse, I think, and he finds this huge transformer, which we find out is the quote unquote bad guy transformer, Megatron. And then, chaos ensues through the whole movie. I'll just zip right to the end. Spoiler alert. So they defeat this really bad guy, right? Outer space transformer bot type thing. And so they decide, what do we do with him? They decommission him, so to speak, but they need to get rid of him. So they take him, they have helicopters and they have him on tow cables, and they decide, let's just drop him down in the deepest part of the ocean. That's a great idea, right? So they're dropping him down into the Mariana Trench, area supposedly. So, but what's interesting is this is going to bring us to our next topic. We're going to start to get into the gods, who are the gods and goddesses and all of that. But look at this imagery, and this is going to tie in with Titanic as well a bit. So here we have this huge, form, and they are dropping him down to be buried where, in Tartarus, down in the depths. So interesting. Okay, then we get into the movie, another movie. Godzilla, King of the Monsters, I think it's called. It was from 2019? Or Godzilla. Yeah, I think it's Godzilla, King of the Monsters. The reason why I'm bringing it up is we have Godzilla over here, and now he has an electrified back scale spine, and there's lightning going off around him. And then we have him down here, on an underwater cave painting wall, which is interesting. They show an entrance to Hollow or Inner Earth. Again, spoiler alerts on this whole show. But anyway, here is the Godzilla figure, and he is fighting the Hydra, or a Hydra-type monster, supposedly alien monster called Ghidorah. Okay, so he has this epic battle. This ice monster with 3 heads has been frozen in the ice from a previous battle with him. We find out later. So anyway, he comes back because some other human agency defrosts these things and they pop up. So he's back to fight it. Okay, that's like they're the nemesis. Now they show this like on a underwater cave wall, and then this is just like an artist thing. Here's it's kind of hard to tell. That's Ghidorah and that's Godzilla. So you can see a vast difference in the scale. And then eventually Godzilla has to go down in the depths to kind of recharge. You find that out later. But what's interesting is that this is the epic battle from history, like that we find on reliefs in the Assyrian or Sumerian. I can't remember which one. We have, this is a depiction of the god Zeus. Under their lore, I think it's Marduk. And he is fighting this, instead of like a dragon-headed hydra, it's just some other type of monster representing total chaos. And this hydra here also, we find out later, if that's the Zeus figure, this one is Typhon. And that Typhon would be born from Gaia and Tartarus. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute. So we're getting into another big story about what started our Earth. So we get into the primordial gods, which included, here I'm going to actually skip out of order on this one, which include the big gods of creation for this planet, supposedly in our galaxy, are Chaos, Gaia, Earth, Tartarus, and Eros. So I'm going to pull up the family tree of these primordial gods. So these gods were like the creator force gods. So the offspring of Gaia, we come down with Gaia, the earth goddess, and Sky, Oranos. Instead of Uranus, it's O-U-R. Sorry, let me do this. Okay. So Gaia comes here with Uranus, Sky, Earth and Sky get together, and they create 12 Titans. All right. So we have the primordial gods having offspring to create the 12 Titans. But then we are told the Greek mythology origin story, right, are that the Olympians are like sons of these characters who then fight the Titans to overthrow them and take supreme rule of the galaxy. So we have a 12 and 12 scenario. We have the Titans, born of the primordial gods. Whoops, over here. I'm sorry. Titans over here. Can you see this? And then we have the Olympians who try to fight and overthrow them. Okay, that's the story, the epic battle. Now, that is called the battle of, okay, so we have the Titanomachy is the name of that, fighting the Titans. Okay, Maki means it's war battle. So we have the Titanomachy where the Olympians come, and yes, they do overthrow the Titans, because all we hear about in our roots is we hear about the Olympians. We don't hear much about the Titans at all. So I'll just read through here real quick. I'll go with the Olympians because most people are familiar with them. The Olympians, 12 of them are Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo, Poseidon, Ares, Artemis, Demeter, Aphrodite, Dionysus, Hermes, and Hephaestus. Okay, so that's the team that wants to overthrow the Titans. Okay, the primordial gods. So then, and supposedly in this whole story, so the Titans have Oceanus, and pardon if I don't say the pronunciation right. We have Oceanus, Coeus, Cryos, Hyperion, Iapetus, Cronus, Themis, Rhea, Thea, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, and I think it's Tehis. So we have this story, and I invite you to go dig in that on your own, because that's going to be like quite an intense story. But we have many, many battles going on, is the point. So apparently things are still intense, and the battles are still going on. So the Titans see that they don't have the edge. The Olympians supposedly need a human to help them win, so they get Heracles or Hercules. So I'm going to just show this. This is actually can be found online. I'll put a link below too. This is kind of like the who's who in the cast of characters on the Titans, what they do, who they were married to, and all that. But I'm going to pass over that right now. So the Titans, we have the Titanomachy, that battle with the Olympians. But then then Gaia needs to bring kind of more defense. So she has the giants come to help fight the Olympians. Now the giants are looking like, human. Let me get to the right. Hang on one second. Okay. The giants sometimes look more human, and this is Gaia down here. And actually here's Gaia. Gaia up here in the corner. Okay, with missing the face. So she has the giants come up, which are like giant human form, to come and fight the Olympians. And they're fighting, and there is an entire real world documentary of this, all in marble, in a frieze that wraps around an altar called the altar to Zeus from Pergamon in Turkey. And it was lifted, okay, this entire thing, this entire altar this had all sculptures around it, and it goes all around the walls of the museum, these things, and they're huge, okay? Each sculpture would take somebody a lifetime probably to carve. And it's showing this battle of the Olympians, like that's an Olympian with a pot. I can't remember if that's Nyx or who that is, but anyway, she's about to hit, one of the giants. But it's this whole battle. And this poor giant is resting his head on the foot of Artemis, who's fighting the giants, fighting Gaia, fighting Earth. Anyway, most of these giants are depicted with snake legs. So actually, it's kind of like the Starbucks logo with the woman, the siren. She's got the split legs, fishtail legs. This is, sorry, I'm trying to move it the right way. These giants mostly have like snake legs, and that's distinguishing them from being the giants, from Earth, which is interesting because you look at like biblical accounts and it says, oh, the snake, was cast down and like condemned to just roam around on its belly. Again, we've got to see who's the good and the bad in the story, because maybe not all the snakes were bad. There's a story of a hydra who helped 3 nymphs protect the golden apple tree, which was gifted by Gaia, I think, to one of the primordial gods, or maybe it was one of the offspring. But anyway, there's this golden apple tree. So it's we're getting to the Garden of Eden example, where not only do these 3 nymphs guard it, but also this several-headed hydra-like being. And so in that story, it's showing that as a good figure, like guarding the apples. And it was protecting him because apparently Heracles' mission, one of his missions, was to steal one. And that was like a no-no, right? And so again, it was all trying to tick off the primordial gods and turf wars kind of thing, right? So are all of these, some of these monsters are made to look really fearsome and ugly? Was that a smear campaign against a being that maybe didn't deserve it? I don't know. Is the snake in the garden maybe not evil at all? I don't know. Just looking at this new angle that I came upon. So this figure, she's giving the snake in the garden some water and nourishing it, and then we have the opposite side of the offspring of the primordial gods who are out to slay it. So we could also look at the divine feminine, divine masculine, the roles, and that it's in the balance, is in the garden, is the paradise. We got a lot of interesting themes running through here. I forget the name of the garden. It begins with an H. I will find it and put it in a link below. There was an interesting article about that. So anyway, in this frieze, wrapping around everywhere, snakes everywhere. So whether it's the legs of the earth giants or just in the background in general, big theme. That's kind of why I brought up the last show too. It was on my mind because of this battle. All right, so I'll just show one more. Now, what I say is, watch who's writing the story. Of course, if you're going to be the victor, you're going to make yourself look great. This is like vanity films, trying to just make people look really good. We have Zeus, and of course, Zeus has some modesty. He's got clothing, whereas the giants they put with no clothes and everything. But anyway, they say this is Zeus because they see, like, they're calling that the thunderbolt, and then we're just seeing the defeat of these giants. Okay, let me just see. Okay, then we get to another thing I wanted to bring up, that there's the use of these gods, and they're coming up again and again and again, not only in history, but in common contemporary cultural references of all these movies. And I've heard it said by others too, and I came to this kind of recognition maybe in 2021. They never left. The gods are still having these turf wars, and they're doing it now, behind, like, the global governments, or and again, I'm not getting into discussion about globe or flat earth here, or toroid or banana or gym shoe shape, but just go with me on the expression. So I really do think these gods that were always warring, they're always still causing wars now. They're that hidden hand. They're that dark entity, that deep state thing that is using other humans as puppets to, execute their evil wishes. I will say evil when it comes to war and slaughter of people and sacrifice, unnecessary bloody sacrifice of innocents. So I think they never left. Why do I think that? Because everything, when we look at space and we look at that 4-letter program that runs it supposedly, and you look at their origin story, why the heck? Every single mission, everything they touch for space has a Greek, I think all Greek, maybe Roman, a little bit of Roman in there too, god names, goddesses names. Why? It's only that. So you've got the big significant programs, Mercury, Saturn, Artemis, like, Apollo, Gemini, the twins, all of it has those references, and they never really deviate. And then you have SpaceX coming along with little Leon. Actually, if you scramble his name around, you can come up with a lot of different combinations. That's why it's funny, I Freudian slip, so Leon, Eon, Noel, even Elon. Anyhow, that character is a character. Now his programs, what do? Oh, they say he's naming it so to be cool. And by the way, he's just a figurehead. That's not the real guy. There's so many versions of him. It's not even funny. If you just have eyeballs to see and look, every time he turns up, he's either younger, older, weirder in the face. Something's happened. Anyhow, it's another story. But so instead of keeping the gods, direct, names running on his program, what does he do? He uses falcon, dragon, but there are other meanings tied with them. And actually, some of those are actually the animals aligned with some of those gods. So, like the dragon can go with Marduk. What else? Falcon, I forget if that's Zeus or the eagle, whatever. All right. Well, yeah, and the eagle is used too, right? The eagle has landed. So you got to look at whose animal symbology goes with which god. It gets very interesting. But nonetheless, it's this god-goddess theme. So I don't believe they went anywhere. We have written in the Bible all the lines of quote-unquote kings, and they lived for hundreds of years, thousands of years. Well, I think our history is much shorter than what has been told as well. So would even give more credence that these characters are still around in some shape or form, right? We're told they can shapeshift. That's interesting, right? Athena could become an owl and fly over her armies. We know about Zeus and all of his exploits and turning into a shower of rain to seduce people, turning into all kinds of things, right? I think there's kernels of truth on all of those stories. Not maybe straight out correct, but close. Then I say that because we get to examples like this, the Parthenon. This is a one-to-one scale Parthenon sitting in where? Oops, Nashville, Tennessee. I've been in there. They used it, the inside in the movie, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Okay. And this is a huge statue that's like real scale of Athena and little Nikes with her. It's a huge shield and spear. I've been in there, and this was before I had my spiritual awakening, and I even felt like spooked. Like it had a weird vibe. I did not like being in there. But anyway, these kids in the movie, they show up in this space, and they have a mission they have to achieve, whatever. So they, of course, get met by opposing forces, and somebody unleashes a Hydra on them. So these are the kids standing at each pillar trying to be protected from each head of a Hydra. Okay, so anyway, they include a lot of mythology in that movie. I think it's a PG movie. I think that came out in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. So if you haven't heard of it, Light Entertainment is that movie with all Greek themes, the mythology themes, but set to now. All right, now we're going to get to the Titanic portion of the show. This one is interesting, so I'm not going to go stay on this too long, but I just want to bring up a couple of things that were like moments for me. One, it's a little personal, the topic. Not only did I say I have a relative who's actually on a couple of these ships and sister ships in the lines, but actually, oops, that reminds me, I need to bring up another slide that's out of order. Hold on. Here we go. It gets fun. Okay. So not only do I know somebody was on him, but I also was, I didn't put the picture here, so I'm just going to talk about it. I did go on a U-boat. This relates. A German U-boat is this huge submarine. If you don't know, if you look it up, U-505 was supposedly captured in Lake Michigan and then brought up on display behind the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. And what is interesting about that is the building they brought it to was one of the surviving buildings of the World's Fair of the 1893 Columbian Exposition. And then 100 years later, there was the 1933 World Fair Exposition, Century of Progress. And supposedly that museum where they brought the U-boat to was functioning as like a natural sciences museum. And then it took them like 100 years to change it and then rebrand it and open it up. Voila, now it's a science and industry museum. Anyhow, little history there. But I have walked and been on the U-boat, so I, have a sense of what it's all about. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is we have a story, a tale, instead of a tale of two cities, we have a tale of two cruise lines. Not cruise, sorry. Passenger ship lines, being too modern. We have, let me come back a step. We have the White Star Line. Okay. We have the White Star Line by itself is this red flag with a white star. And then we have the Cunard Line, which they're represented by a lion holding up the globe with a crown on its head. Okay. Eventually, these two lines were like co-owners at a certain point. But before that, they were competitors. Each had a fleet, and I'm going to come back to this. Each had a fleet in trios. So the number one, headlining group of the time for the White Star Line, and now putting emphasis on the White Star, because if you remember at the very beginning of the show, I talked about that aligning with Ishtar or Isis or Inanna. That's all the same goddess. And that's a symbol with her is the white star representing Venus, and they depict it often as an 8-pointed star. But in this case, the White Star Line is just showing the like a 5-pointed star, but there's a whole nother badger hole, I'll call it, that connects that white star with Isis, Ishtar, all of that goddess. So I'm saying these gods and goddesses are still around, and they're having turf wars all over the planet, and they have galactic ties, I'll say. So the reason why I'm saying that is we've got White Star Line had their trio of ships, they were originally the Olympic, the Titanic, and like I said, then so Olympic, Titanic, and the Britannic. And the Britannic was originally named the Gigantic, but then the Titanic sank before that released. And the story goes that from a PR marketing point of view, they didn't want to call something gigantic after the Titanic sank, like that would have been poor form. So then supposedly they called it the Britannic. Now, I want to bring your attention to that if we've got these turf wars going on with the gods, we have the Olympians, the Olympic. We have the Titans, the Titanic. And we would have had the giants, Gaia's giants, the earth trying to protect earth. So that's that trio. They're telling you right out, this is the play of the gods still playing out. And this becomes important to when these things are sinking and what's happening with them. I'll get to that in a second. So this is the White Star Line, okay? And that's actually the three ships. That's the Britannic, the Titanic in the middle, and the Olympic. Now, that's an artist rendition. Now here, so the blue that they're depicting down here, that's actually the White Star Line. Those were their big ships, and they were competing with these, which are Cunard's Line, which is Lusitania. We know a big famous thing about that in history. Get to that in a minute. Mauritania and the Aquitania. Okay, and again, personal moment. My great grandfather, whoever, I just don't remember how many times back, rode on both the Aquitania and the Olympic. Okay, so I know those two exist in real life. All right, so I want to get to a little story about the Olympic, Titanic, and the Britannic that was actually the Gigantic. I'm not going to go too far. There's so much. This actually, a YouTuber did a 5-hour show on this, actually on all of those ships I just mentioned. And I'll put that in the description box below too, because it is fascinating. Hang on one second. I'm just looking up the history so I get this right. Okay, I'll have to I'm going to go by memory. That can be good or bad. So we'll see. Fact check me at will. I thought I had something easy to access right away. Oh, let me just see. Let me try to find it. And if I don't, I don't. Because it's really fascinating, the history. Okay. Yeah, here we go. This is interesting. So I'm going to give like the real cheat sheet short version of this. But we have the Olympic, the Titanic, like I said, look on the bottom row, okay, and the Britannic, which was the Gigantic. So the Olympic goes out first, and it goes out in 1911. Does that sound familiar, the numbers? 1911, 911 at the end of that, okay? So the Olympic goes out for kind of like a run. I don't know if it was a test run or whatever. Hold on, I'm going to find the whole story on it. Okay, I can't find it exactly. Well, anyway, the Olympic goes out ahead of Titanic in the water. The idea was eventually that two ships would always be crossing each side of the Atlantic continuous, so you wouldn't have two on the one side at the same time. It's like kind of they're always crossing, so you always have one on each shore kind of thing. Between here and UK and France, there were ports where these things went. So anyway, the Olympic comes out in 1911, but has an accident in the harbor with a ship that had a front that was ramming capable. So it was reinforced to ram stuff. So it collides with that in September 1911, by the way. And it doesn't catastrophically ruin the Olympic. The HMS Hawk is the name, Hawk with an E at the end. And again, watch symbology of whose animal goes with which god and goddesses. So the Hawk tears large holes into this, I think the starboard side of the hull. And what happens? They see that, two compartments were full, but it was okay. So I'm calling a flag here. I'm going to make a joke, pun intended, red flag, because the White Star Line that owns these ships has a red flag in the background. I'm calling a little red flag to pay attention to that, because we know that these secret societies behind all of these things, financial, and with these huge ventures of constructing ships is huge money, and everything else that they put into it. So what struck me, and I just saw this actually before coming on the show, so I'm going to try to tidy this up, but do double check me, look into this on your own, do your own research. But I got a little like watch this red flag on this Olympic ship, because it collides with this. They see that it still can withstand two compartments within the ship and still be okay. Now, to me, right away, it says no one was killed, but this incident delayed the Titanic's maiden voyage, because the Olympic needed to borrow parts from the Titanic, and then the Titanic had to wait to get the parts, like a propeller. It's just a crazy story. So to me, right away, it's like I smell a rat. Like the delay of the Titanic was done so that it could have its catastrophe and sinking by the iceberg, which happened on April 14th going into April 15th. Now, April 15th, for these secret societies that kind of run the world in the banking scene, that hidden hand I was talking about, the dark side of things, they go by a certain, they like to charge up numerology and numbers and work them in kind of dark arts toward the negative. So in this case, April 15th, the delay for the Titanic happened, and it was 1912, which still gets you a 9/11 in there. That's code. That's a code that they love to do these disasters. I'm talking about this kind of secret society on a global network scale and tied in with the banking, and all the money and the control of the earth. For it was happening. Now they're losing their grip, thank God. But anyway, the point is that they delayed the Titanic because it needed to go on a ritualistic killing. They do these rituals. Somebody gets sacrificed. And so it makes sense that they delayed so the Titanic could do this sacrificial ritual event on April 15th on a 9/11, numerology in their year, 1912. So we got a 1912. We got a 911. Now, the April 15th side of that is when I think Abraham Lincoln was assassinated on April 15th. These are global, kind of quote unquote, I don't like the word, but reset events. They use the numerology, they charge up the numbers. I think the same thing happened with the Notre Dame Cathedral. I know it was April. I want to say if it wasn't the 15th, it was darn close. And again, which team? I think that's infighting turf wars with these quote unquote God figures that never left. But getting back to the Olympics, so they saw that 2 of the watertight compartments flooded, and the propeller shaft twisted, but it was okay. Like it could still run. And I'm calling a red flag on that because to me, I just got this feeling like, dang it, they're doing what they did for 9/11 that we know in New York, where I forget how many years prior, a couple of years prior to the big catastrophe that was 9/11, there was like a test bombing, I'm going to call it, of one of the towers with the Ryder truck incident, where supposedly a guy with a Ryder truck had explosives in it, left it to blow. And people came out, they were all dusty, whatever, but it was minor. It wasn't what happened later. So I'm just going to say this smells a lot like that they send the Olympic out, it gets some damages, but they're trying to test out, I think, what the ship can and cannot handle when they get to the Titanic, because I do believe that was an inside job, sabotaged. There are many reasons why that could happen. I won't get into that on this show, but absolutely. So that was like a little test run. Oh, how many compartments can flood and the ship will be okay or not? I think that was a test run with the Olympic. Now, when we get to the Titanic, that was a year later. They get the propeller back, supposedly, that the Olympic borrowed, give it back to the Titanic to use. Okay, I'm not even going to say anything about that. It's just crazy. So then the Titanic goes out. Well, I'm going to call red flag on that too, because Titanic goes out, sinks there, has destruction, supposedly because it hits an iceberg. I'm not buying that still. I think, if they've got that amount of money invested on a ship of that caliber, I don't think there was hubris and ego involved. I think somebody would know, I can't wreck this thing. We got to have a smooth journey and bring this ship in one piece. I do believe that we've got U-boats. That's why I brought up the U-boat, the submarine. They were there because 3 years after Titanic, the Lusitania is sunk. Remember, that was Cunard's line, the opposite shipping line. So if a U-boat sunk the Lusitania 3 years after the Titanic sank, to me, Titanic got hit with a torpedo or something, some weaponry from the U-boat, and that's probably what really brought it down. That's just what I'm saying, because we're only talking a 3-year difference. Now, some people say, oh, but no one would want to do that to start war or whatever. Of course, it's the perfect way to start a war and conflict. And if you're under the water, nobody sees you. They get to test out their U-boat, and there was mutual gain, because whoever's hiring the U-boat to go out there is also the same players involved with the Titanic. So again, multiple reasons why somebody would want that boat going down, and I think it had nothing to do with an iceberg because of the U-boat capability. That's just my point of view. Okay, so anyway, again, which story feels right to you? Then we've got So then the Lusitania goes down because it was in a lane, and apparently, world war is kicking up. So this one gets sunk. And then the other two kind of take over for the two lines. And at some point after these horrific, tragic accidents, like I can't even believe this White Star Line would be permitted to keep going after such a horrific event. But see, that's why they can, because they call it, iceberg, it was an accident. These were, I guess, the only two really competing lines to get people traveling back and forth. Anyway, long history with all of this. I just thought I'd bring up that angle that I was finding. The reason why, too, I say I think it was deliberately taken down on the Titanic's case is the symbology. So we have the Titanic sinking down to watery depths. So what is Titanic? Titans. So Olympic wins. It keeps in operation. But the Titans, they get buried down where? We're told that the depths are Tartarus. So the symbolism, the imagery, like everything involved, it's still to me Greek gods' turf wars happening. Again, I feel it so strongly. Okay, now to substantiate that further, I put these images because we have James Cameron, right? The director of the Titanic that everyone loves so much. And Jack, Rose, fictional characters. Some of Jack was anyway, supposedly. Rose, I think, also. But point is his involvement. So he does a movie, I forget what year, maybe end 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, called, it could have been late 90s, I don't remember, but The Abyss. So spoiler alert again, it's a guy goes down really, really deep, sees these bioluminescent, figures, turns out they're alien and part of this huge underwater ship and city, right? So he's fascinated with the abyss. He even, in real life, went into the Mariana Trench, supposedly. He also, James Cameron, took a trip to Antarctica, to the South Pole. They say one trip, at least one, all right? He also went down to Titanic site, supposedly dove 33 times. Now, again, that's one of these, we'll just say, secret society clubs running the world. One of the Freemason, lovely, I say it a little sarcastically, one of those numbers that they charge up for ritualistic things is 33. So he goes down 33 times. He's in the club, their club, quote unquote. What happens? The submersible, they call it Titanic later, recently, and send it down and it implodes. So it also gets buried with it, or Titanic 1, I forget what it's called, something with Titanic in it. So that was doomed because the gods' turf wars. They're sending down sacrifices and burying these things in Tartarus. Again, my point of view, right? Then you get James Cameron doing the Avatar movies. The first one has all these bioluminescent characters and whatever. And I was reading somewhere again before so much got scrubbed off the internet after 2018 that he may have seen some bioluminescent activity when he was down in Antarctica if he went into like an inner passage to Hollow Earth. Now the U-boat thing comes around too because World War I supposedly ends, and there are reports of a lot of the higher officers in the Nazi regime escaping on submarines and finding underwater tunnel entrances to Antarctica. Again, what stories seem true, ring true? Does the official narrative make sense? Often, I find no, not so much. All right, so just to close out, though, the Titanic whole thing, arc of thinking, I just wanted to bring up, there's a lot of information on it, but I just wanted to show this is a depiction of Isis, Ishtar, Inanna. That's her white star, and she's depicted with her foot on the lion. So she's got the lion and the star, Cunard line. Where'd you go? Over here, the lion, and we got the white star, could be Venus, Ishtar's star, and the lion is holding the world much like Atlas would, right? So the gods' symbolism is just everywhere. And, it just keeps going exponentially so. All right. But let's move on, and then we'll wrap things up. Okay, just now, try to pick up the pace and lighten the tone a bit. So now, I got to go out of order a bit. Hang on. Okay. think I'll go this way. All right. So now we get to the Assyrian, Sumerian cultures. We're talking Iraq, Mesopotamia. And I'm sure a lot of you by now, and if you haven't, I'll link in the description below some really good, really nice videos other YouTubers have done on this. Whoops, if I can, sorry, I need to do this better. Here we go. Okay. So here we have some reliefs, and we have these figures. Now, they're carrying, like, people are calling them handbags. Some are calling them buckets. People are trying to get to, why do they have a bucket? Something that looks like a pine cone. And a lot of them have these, where is it? You can see a little bit of it here. I have it on the next slide better. Like a watch that has like this chamomile form or daisy or chrysanthemum form on it, okay? I talked about at the very beginning that form looks like the imperial crest of Japan. So we've got these guys coming up with these, they look kind of like pine cone shaped things. Now, given the area that they are in the world, I'm going to say it's not a pine cone, but it could be a date palm, like heart of palm. It looks very much like that. And so some people are saying, oh, they're coming up to this tree of life, and they're, I guess here you can see like, oh, they're pollinating, and giving new life here, it's a symbolism for that, right? Others say that this is the genetic manipulation by these people and creating life forms here on this planet, creating these are giants, like creating the shorter race like us. And that's just a symbolism for that. Now, when you go closer in, you see like a UFO up here and a guy up there or whatever. So to me, all of that could be like, there's some people are saying, oh, those are seed pouches and they're pollinating this. I don't think that's the whole story, because these guys that have no wings are holding the bags, and the guys with the wings, I'm sorry, other way around. These guys are winged figures, humanoids, and these guys on the insides don't have wings. And so this is only seeming particular to if they had the wings or if they're kind of a creature. So to me, these bags and the wrist bands, so to speak, or bracelets, they could mean any kind of thing. If we're talking these are galactic beings or beings, like these could be things that are grounding or for gravity to keep them from like floating up. The wristband could be portal travel, or it could be some device that works with like something very electric. So if you look at how to make a battery, the most basic battery, you have some kind of a liquid. Actually, I want to read that. So anyway, this could be anything from, okay, so they have maybe some seats, but doesn't explain why they're standing behind each other. These guys are holding like rods. One has it touching this thing, this apparatus, and the other one is holding it up. So I think they are forming some kind of electrical circuit or current. And I think it's charging up through this thing that somehow is relating to this ET craft above. That's the sense I got off of this particular image. Other images here, we just see his hand with the thing touching the leaves. That does look like some type of pollination scenario. So again, it's not like, oh, it was just this or just that. I think there are a number of things going on with some of these depictions. This one has like a eagle figure, again with the cone, like over here towards something like this. Some people think, oh, that's what's called the stairway to heaven, because there's a UFO object up here. There's just so many things that could be going on. Now over here, we have a figure. He seems kind of engaged with this, doing something with this palm. This is definitely like a palm tree, kind of like this over here, the top of it with the little conical thing, the palm, heart of palm there. And then this, I think, is like a female figure or some figure, and they're not engaging at all. They're just like standing off to the side. So I don't know what's going on with that story, but that's a good story, whatever's happening there. Here, I'll hold this up. See what you think. But I don't know. I don't know what to make of that story. But there's definitely something to fertility, creating life. Then we've got these two guys have bull-like legs. So they're half man, half bull, and that's the palm tree. And then we have like a solar disc. So much imagery. Again, the gods, anything with a bull, that would be aligned with Marduk, who's supposed to be like a Zeus character. But from everything that I've gathered, I think that can also be a very kind of a negative, like evil character in the story. Anywho, we'll see if he pops up again. All right, so I think we'll get to Oh, okay. Give me 1 second. I flipped out of order a tiny bit. Okay. Now we'll look real quick at the Ishtar Gate. Just to close up on the gods and goddesses a bit now. So this was lifted from Iraq, and it sits now in the former East Berlin Museum called the Pergamon Museum. It's on an island, and I just looked it up. You can't even go see this now because it's supposedly closed down for 11 years for renovation. To me, that seems excessive. I don't know what's going on with that. So there's no access to this, apparently. But double check that if anyone's heading out that way. Now, Ishtar Gate, we talked about Ishtar is synonymous with Inanna, with Isis. But this gateway, this whole thing, this complex, was supposedly, it's attributed to being built by Nebuchadnezzar II. And on the other side of this tower over here, down here, there's like a little inscription plaque saying Nebuchadnezzar II is the greatest and whatever else, right? Or in honor of his gods, who he thinks is the greatest. So supposedly this is very much about Marduk and Ishtar, or Isis, because we have the bull imagery, then we have a dragon, bull, dragon, it alternates, and then we have the lions procession coming out. You don't see it, it's off the screen this way. There's all these lions on either side. So we said the lions are Ishtar, and the dragon and the bulls are Marduk. And here's a depiction of we'll zoom in there. The dragon is that weird skinny little beast. And then over here we have like the humanoid, part bull, part man, would be more along the Marduk line. And then if we go further back, I didn't mention it, but when we talk about the primordial gods, a lot of these gods have the planet names. They're planets. So are those planets like Jupiter is supposed to be Zeus? Mars is Aries, Mars. Do we have a sentient being in there somehow? Like the Earth might have Gaia as a sentient being in there. We can go down a whole lot of badger holes, but I'll leave it at that. Okay, so now we have that imagery of what they were calling the wristbands or the watch, which could be some type of teleportation device, could be just something that regulates frequency, could be something that charges up like a battery or helps ground when they're doing whatever they were doing at that like Tree of Life type thing. Anyway, that got me thinking of the rose windows at Chartres Cathedral I mentioned. That's the western doorway. And then that's the other side. So I think this is looking from the inside and that's from the outside. So we have this motif. And then the floor of Chartres Cathedral is this labyrinth with this down here, this like flower in the middle. Looks very much like a circuit board. I have been inside this church and outside. This is before I had my awakening. I wish I had gone after, but it would mean more. But there was a special feeling at the center. And I remember looking and being very disappointed because there's this patch job. Something was there and you can just see they just badly patched it too, I think to make it obvious. So what was happening at the center of this thing is the question. Now, some speculate that these were healing centers. A lot of YouTube channels are talking about it now, where the whole cathedral would be a resonant chamber to help heal people, that you could even sit or lay on the floor and feel the healing, that the spires and everything have, conduct up to the ethers and bring things through. The bells had a resonance to heal, and that everything was so in sync and perfectly attuned. And that would not only heal you if you were inside the cathedral, but also out over the city, right? Everything was like at a higher vibration. And what happens systematically, a lot of these churches, they've been, fires, mysterious fires, bells removed, bells destroyed to ruin the frequency. And I believe that's because these turf war gods that came in to try to overthrow the beautiful harmony that was the Garden of Eden that was here, our state of harmony and resonance, beautiful high frequency resonance, was destroyed by these jokers who came in seeking to overthrow Gaia. And so anyhow, and they're, we're a much larger stature, than us chickens down here, so to speak. So anyway, I'm just trying to tie that in a little bit, trying to weave these threads in. I know I'm kind of going on a bit and I'm going to wrap it up under the second hour here. Anyway, this has clearly been on my brain about, these quote unquote wristwatches or bracelets, or what could these things be? Were they simply marking, here's again the hand holding the bucket or whatever he's holding, a good zoom in on that watch, that band, whatever it is, or was it simply marking that these were special, either genetic modifying scientists, or they were operating the technology, or were they at the service of whatever god, king slash thing? Is that all that symbolized? I think it's more to it. I think it is a part of a technological system that involves these buckets, these other rods that they hold. They're either grounding rods, or there's something to do with an electrical circuit. What I forgot to mention on the Ishtar slide was that there is a thing with electricity called, if you hook up lights, it's called daisy chaining. And it just reminded me, because we've got the daisy, that's the same, symbol on their wrist, quote unquote, wristband or the bracelet. And so daisy chaining is with lighting. If you've got a light fixture here, you plug in here, and then from that one you go to the next one. So it makes like a daisy chain. So I don't know, I keep getting a lot of something with power generator and whatever, not just genetic manipulation or whatever with those images. Okay, so now I have that daisy pattern, we'll just call it. It could be chamomile, it could be chrysanthemum, on my brain. And I was in the grocery store earlier and I saw this and I took a picture and I'm like, oh my gosh, life imitates art, art imitates life. I see this and it's a symbol for a whole netted bag of oranges. And I was just laughing because I'm like, oh my gosh, the symbol's popping up again. And it says glorious goodness on the outside of it. So it's hard to see, but the text says glorious goodness. And I was just laughing because again, the very first word of the show is hi, which means good. And you can take that further, meaning good or God, right? And God is good, that whole thing. All right, so this is just a little montage of more of the same what we talked about. We talked about this. That comes from the Ishtar Gate. That's the imperial crest to the point that it's even on the Japanese passport. This is just another image showing a son of a face of this creator being, I guess, and they have like more of the flower motif in the hand showing creation. Now, what's interesting is this coin is actually one of the first coins circulating in the US, and we have a big prominent sun, star, whatever on it. So that's a whole nother thing. I invite you to go look for fun, or if it's fun for you, go down that badger hole and look up what pictures, images are on the fronts and backs of these very first coins used in the US. Now, they say they were produced by a private entity before the Federal Reserve came on. Well, the Federal Reserve is also run by private families. So, again, watch the stories being told or see what works for you. Now, I'm just going to close on 2 or 3 more images. 3 more images, just since we were talking about Iraq. And again, anywhere there's like big war, it's not just over, guaranteed, not just over minerals or resources, or somebody, stepped on somebody's toes. It's because there's something else worth fighting for by certain entities, like Iraq. They had the ziggurats. Okay, we know we've got like the pyramids in Giza, look like this, kind of thing. We've got other ones that are stepped in Mexico. Around the world, there's some kind of pyramid forms. We've got more mound-like ones, anything and everything, right? Well, in the part of the world with Iraq, we had ziggurats. And they were stepped, and they had big ramps. And supposedly, according to who you read and look at, these were like the temples to the gods. So the priests, remember, there was like, even with the Greek culture, there was only like one order or dedicated people who were allowed to go up to the very top. Some say it's because craft would land in there, and that's where they would communicate with their quote unquote patron god. They were ETs. I do believe that the Titans is one class of ET. Primordial, supposed primordial gods were another, and the giants, from inner earth. It says it's Gaia's children. So anyway, again, I think giants come from earth, Olympians from somewhere else, and primordial yet from somewhere else. Just my take on it. But anyway, that's the story with the ziggurats. And then what was interesting is this also brings in the idea of maybe those guys were working with some kind of power, not electricity exactly, but something like that, because this is, I guess, some kind of bucket or pail. And the motif on here shows like a ziggurat, but everything seems really charged up, like charged up energy is what I get off of that. So anyway, see what you think. And I'll just show a couple more images of Iraq. And again, this is like the Tower of Babel idea. And the Tower of Babel story really would be that the tower was like a spaceport and people were trying to maybe get off this rock, like stargated out of here. And maybe, whoever was running this didn't want that to happen. And so they deliberately destroyed it. Babel, also the root word for that, the whole Hebrew for that is confusion. So they confused, people from understanding each other. Supposedly the story goes, right, that everyone started speaking different languages. So I don't know what happened there, but I do know that that was the idea that they're building this thing, this stepped pyramid up, trying to reach the heavens. Why? To, go to other galaxies, use it as a spaceport. Makes sense to me. Anything on a mountaintop, right? Even your whole Moses, going to the mountaintop, that was to meet his, I don't think that was the loving creator God. I think that was probably an ET type God, whatever, but that's a whole nother story. And that's the story I intuit, but again, for everybody, it's very personal, could be very different. Now, this is interesting because I found somebody show this slide of what the ziggurat of Ur, I think this is the ziggurat of Ur, looked like in 1932 and then in 2002. So remember, we've had wars with the Gulf Storm and Desert Storm and all that. And was it really wars for what they're saying, or did they go to destroy evidence of things? And we do know that a lot of the museums, they destroyed a lot of the artifacts and things that would give us clues about our true history. So a lot of times the wars are just pretense to destroy stuff and also to go in and maybe use some of these things if in fact something like this could be used as a stargate. It's said that the Pyramid of Giza wasn't, a burial for kings, a tomb. It was actually a power generator. There used to be water current and it could generate power, and that whole cap at the top of the Great Pyramid of Giza shone out a light for the whole city and a free power, free limitless energy. And that inside there were chambers, the Queen's Chamber, whatever you get into, was an old way of technically, mechanically being able to use it as a stargate to get off of the Earth plane or the Earth dimension. Now there's other ways to do it. If you're an adept, you don't need that construct. But supposedly now we're out of alignment with whatever it needed to do, and it wouldn't work in the way that it used to. So just a little fun fact, I guess. All right, well, I think that brings me to the end of what I was going to say. I said way more than I even thought I would. So if you hung in there, thank you. If this is all new to you, you're probably going to walk away going, what was this? But again, I just wanted to drop a lot of food for thought items. I hope there's at least just one little part or aspect of the show that was at least entertaining, if nothing more. And I'll say, till next time. This show, the whole way that my channel is moving, I'm just going very much on divine guidance here. So I think if you look at any of my previous shows, I have over like 200 that was just sky watching when I started out, pointing out cloaking craft, camouflage craft, things of that nature. Then it morphed and changed, did some card readings, all throughout, did nature observations, which I still continue to do. I actually just posted a YouTube shorts of a cute little red-shouldered hawk, I believe it is. It's pretty much that. Oh, thanks, Rox Girl. Thanks for being here. Big hugs coming your way for everybody. So that one, I still thread through some with our weaving theme. I still put some nature things up when I see them. It's just intuitive guidance. So this little segment of me putting out kind of these like shape of the earth, the serpents, and now this, it has been nagging at me to get this thing about the turf war of the gods out there. And I know we took a really wavy journey through, but that's just kind of how I go. I just go however I'm guided. But I felt like I just needed to get that out there, and whatever happens with it or not, good. And then I think the direction of this channel is going to change yet again. So we'll see where it leads. In the meantime, have a beautiful Friday or Saturday, wherever you are in the world. I send you big love and hugs. And if everything's great in your world, fantastic. If it's not, just know tremendous peace and love are coming your way, peace of mind. Just know that we are all kind of going through some very weird times right now. And we'll just keep going one step after the other. And we'll find each other and lift each other up. I send all of you tremendous peace and love. Till next time. Bye.